Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, my name is Syafadillah Wanodya Diftu. I'm the student of English Education 2019 from University of PGRI Kanjuruhan, Malang. Today I would like to take this opportunity to present about designing lesson plan. So I will discuss 4 points, namely the concept of lesson plan, the components of lesson plan, the principle of designing lesson plan, and the stages of developing lesson plan. Well, let's start with the first discussion about the concept of lesson plan. Okay, do you know what lesson plan is? From Wikipedia search, assessed on the 6th of September 2009, a lesson plan is teacher's detailed description of the course of instruction for an individual lesson. Then, from the search of the Ministry Regulation Number 41, year 2007, states that the lesson plan is the elaboration of syllabus which illustrates the teaching and learning activities to achieve the goals of the basic competency. In essence, the lesson plan is a teacher's guide in teaching in the classroom to achieve basic competency goals based on the new curriculum or KTSP. The purpose of designing a lesson plan is to make the teaching and learning interactive, inspirative, joyful, challenging, and be able to motivate students to be active, creative, and self-reliant in line with their talent, motivation, their physical and psychological development. Okay, now let's move on to the next discussion about the components of lesson plan. Here are some components that must be written in the lesson plan. Number 1 is identity of the subject matter. Subject matter consists of title of the lesson, class or semester, program, especially for senior high, theme, and time allotment. Number 2 is competency standards. Competency standards is the ability qualifications that student must have. It describes the mastery of knowledge, attitudes, and skills obtained through each class or semester for every subject. Number 3 is basic competency. Basic competency is the sum of students' abilities in certain subjects as a reference in determining indicators of achieving competency in a subject. Number 4 is indicator for competency achievement. Competency achievement indicators are formulated with operational verbs that can be measured, including knowledge, attitudes, and skills. Next, the instructional goal. Instructional goal is a description of the process and learning outcomes achieved by students in accordance with basic competencies. Next is the instructional material. The instructional material contains facts, concepts, principles, and relevant procedures. Number 7 is time allotment. In designing lesson plans, time must be maximally allocated in order to achieve basic competency and learning load. Next is methodology. Methods are used by teachers to create the teaching and learning process to enable the students to achieve the basic competency or a set of specified indicators. Furthermore, an important component that must be written in the lesson plan is learning activities. Learning activity is divided into 3 parts, namely pre-activity, whilst activity, and post-activity. The next is evaluation and learning resources. In evaluation, the assessment must revert to standard evaluation, and to select learning resources must revert to competency standard and the basic competency, as well as the learning material, the teaching and learning activities, and also the indicators for competency achievement. Next, I will discuss about the principle of designing a lesson plan. There are several criteria that must be considered in designing lesson plans. The criteria are individual differences, fostering students' participation, developing students' reading and writing habits, giving feedback and follow-up, link and unity, employing the information and communication technology. Okay, now I'll discuss about the stages of developing a lesson plan. There are 6 stages of designing an English lesson plan, namely mapping the competency standard and the basic competency, determining the indicators for basic competency achievement, setting up the purpose, selecting the learning material, structuring the stages of instruction, and the last is preparing the assessment. Okay, the first is mapping the competency standard and the basic competency. The competency-based curriculum developed in the content standard is prepared to teach students the communicative competency, which covers the actional competence, linguistic competence, socio-cultural competence, and strategic competence. In general, there are 4 competency standards which are stated in the documents of content standard or SI attachment to English subjects, namely listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Number 2 is determining the indicators for basic competency achievement. Indicators reflect measurable or observable behavior to show the achievement for the basic competency, which will be used as the reference of the assessment. Indicators for achievement should be written by using operational verbs covering knowledge, attitude, and skills. The next is setting up the purpose. A. The process. You must consider student involvement in learning. The activities should be student-centered so that the student can be more active in the learning process. So not only teachers must be active in learning activities, but students must also be active. For this, teachers are expected to make learning activities including listening, reading, speaking, and writing activities that are creative, interesting, and challenging, so that students are more interested, creative, and motivated. The learning outcome. It refers to the achievement of the basic competencies covering knowledge, attitudes, and skills. The next is selecting the learning material. In selecting learning materials, there are several things that you must pay attention to, namely, number 1, learning materials must be based on the student's literacy level, like performative, functional, or informative. Number 2, select material according to the suggested text type. The suggested text type include descriptive, procedural, recalculation, narrative, and reporting in junior high school. Meanwhile, for senior high school, the text types are news items, discussions, explanations, expositions, and reviews. Number 3, the applied learning material must meet the curriculum requirements in teaching students for communicative purposes. The next is structuring the stages of instruction. The lesson is carried out through 3 phases, namely, number 1 is pre-activity. Pre-activity is the activity carried out at the beginning of the lesson. This activity aims to make students more active in participating in learning activities. Number 2 is wheels activity, the main learning process and aimed at achieving the basic competency. This activity is suggested to follow the 2-cycle approach, oral and written, and the 4 stages of lesson development, namely building knowledge of the field or BKOF, modeling of the text or MOT, joint designing lesson plan, MGMP Bahasa Inggris 11 construction of the text or JCOT, and independent construction of the text or ICOT. The last is post-activity. This activity carried out at the end of the lesson. This activity contains summarizing, evaluation, reflection, feedback, and follow-up activities. And the last is preparing the assessment. Assessment is a method of evaluating student achievement to ensure that students have arrived at their intended goals and have been formulated as indicators of competency achievement. Here are what we have to assess: communication that happens in text, students' ability to create and respond to text, in listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So the conclusion of my presentation today is planning is the most important step before instruction. This aims to make learning effective and successful. So make sure you design your lesson plans properly according to the new curriculum or KTSP so that your learning is effective and systematic. Okay, that's all my presentation today. Thank you for your attention, and I'm sorry if there are mistakes. See you next time. Goodbye. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.